Happy Thursday. This is really not a video that I want to do, but it's a video that probably definitely needs to be done because there's a lot of people online that are making really bad takes. But the issue is, this is a tragic death of Georgia Neely. Any city failed him. But in order to understand this, we have to go back in time. We have to go back to 2007 to truly understand how the city failed this young person. Now, this is the best I'm going to be able to come up with in short periods of time is this tweet from Crime in New York City. The mother of Georgia Neely, who died at the age of 30 after being placed in a chokehold on Friday on the F train, we'll go more into that one, Monday afternoon also died at the hands of another person. Christy Neely, who was 36 when she was discovered dead, stuffed in a suitcase on the side of the highway in Bronx, 2007. Jordan Neely, who was 18 at the time, testified at his mother's murder trial that she and her boyfriend, Sean Southern, fought every day in their Benai apartment before he killed her. The boyfriend, who represented himself at the trial, was convicted in 2012 of strangling her and sentencing him to 30 years in prison, according to the news reports. Like I said, this is a very tragic story. And at this time, just because he was 18, the city should have stepped in and mentored this person, made sure that he was okay, make sure he had a foundation. But they failed to do so. It's like they got the conviction. Maybe resources was given, maybe resource wasn't. Maybe he turned it down or they weren't aggressive enough. Doesn't really matter. According to the New York Post, I think this goes in a little bit more detail. Jordan Neely, the homeless man, choked to death on the subway, sank into a deep depression after his mother was brutally murdered by his stepfather in 2007, was not properly treated for his mental illness, friends and family told the Post. Neely, who died Monday after being held in the chokehold for 15 minutes by a staffing gator, descended into a complete mess after his mother, Christy Neely, was reportedly strangled to death and then stuffed into a suitcase, I guess when he was 14, according to his aunt, Carolyn Neely. My sister Christine was murdered in 2007. After that, he had never been the same. Calling his 40, had a big impact and developed depression, and it grew and became more serious. He was sick from PTSD. Doctors knew his condition and needed to be treated for that. Caroline, who described herself as Jordan's closest living relative, said that she pleaded with judges and doctors to get the help, the proper care for his nephew, but no available. The whole system just failed him. He fell through the cracks of the system, she said. Christy Neely was murdered by Sean Sutherland, then 50, who stuffed her dead body into a suitcase and threw it on the shoulder of the Henry Hudson Parkway, according to a 2012, NewJersey.com report. Not Jonathan, why do I want to call him Jonathan? It's Jordan. My dyslexia is picking up right now, unfortunately. This is a tragic story. This isn't something to mock. Jordan was even called to testify in Southern's murder trial when he was 18. The relationship has been crazy, fight every day. He said when describing the relationship between his 36-year-old mother and Southern, according to the news outlet. During the trial, Jordan said that he said goodbye to his mother before school on April 4th, 2007, but Sutherland blocked him from their bedroom. He said later that day, Sutherland packed up and moved out. Sutherland was found guilty of murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison in March 2012. Nidra Gubin of Washington Heights, who said that she wanted to be identified as the close friend of the family, said that she knew Jordan's late mother the most, or for most of her life, and knew Jordan since he was 4 years old. He suffered so much because of what happened to his mother. Guba told the Post that she was his sole support and his father sure wasn't. Guba said Jordan loved doing his Michael Jackson impersonation on the subway when he was younger, but spiraled into difficulties in recent years. He liked to hang out at train stations, Carolyn said. He wasn't aggressive. That's not who he is. He loved to dance, and that was his outlet. That was his mental outlet after his mother died. Jordan reportedly had been arrested numerous times. He really started going downhills 2 years ago, Guba said. I would see him all the time to give him something to eat. It's like he gave up. He felt his dreams were dead. He needed his mother. Cops said Jordan has been living on the streets and had a record of history of mental illness. But Guda said that he had a place to live recently but did not want to say where. Both women said Jordan's father has not been around much. Caroline Neely said Audrey Zachary, now 60, abandoned Jordan as a baby. Nidra said Jordan lived with his father occasionally, but the two did not get along. Carolyn said that she last spoke to Jordan on FaceTime 7 months ago. He would call me and he would video chat. He would come to me with when he had a problem, said Caroline, who now lives in Watertown, New York. During the last call, he was smiling, had a beautiful smile. Jordan had to testify. His mother and Sutherland met at law school at the time she died. Chrissy Neely was working as a telemarketer in Manhattan. Sources said Sutherland had worked for a law firm at some point. Carolyn Neely said that she started a GoFundMe for her nephew and says another one was created early Tuesday is a fake one. Alberto Vaquez, a freelance journalist who filmed the video of the shocking incident, told the Post Neely was unhinged, yelling at riders that he didn't have food or drinks and he didn't care if he go to jail. Mr. Vaquez said at the time that he did not believe the 30-year-old man could die. None of us were thinking that. He was moving and he was defending himself. New York subway choking victim Jordan Neely. What we know. May 1st, 2023. Who? Jordan Neely, a homeless man who was fatally strangled aboard a Northern F train just before 2:30 p.m., according to the police. He reportedly started acting erratically on the train and harassing other passengers before being restrained, ultimately choked by a trafficker identified as a 20-year-old Marine from Queens. The Marine who's seen on the video applying the chokehold was taken into custody, later released, but the DA is mulling charges, which could include involuntary manslaughter, according to experts. The fallout, the city medical examiner ruled Neely's death as a homicide, knowing that he died due to the compression of his neck chokehold. This will be weighed during the investigation to whether charges will be brought for Neely's death. Neely's aunt told the Post that he became a complete mess following the brutal murder of his mother in 2007. She knows that he was schizophrenic while suffering from PTSD and depression. The whole system just failed him. He fell through the cracks of the system, Carolyn Neely said. Law enforcement says Neely had numerous arrests on his record, including for drugs, disorderly conduct, and fare beating. At the time of his death, Neely had a warrant out for his arrest in November, or for a November 2021 case where he accused of assaulting a 67-year-old woman from East Village, the source says. Mayor Eric has said it's important for the DA to complete the investigation into Neely's death and not to rush the conclusion. I'm not normally a fan of Mayor Eric Adams, but he is completely right. He is completely right when we need to wait for the DA to complete the investigation and let the DA do their job, let the law enforcement do their job. Talking to you, AOC, the city examiner ruled Neely's death a homicide Wednesday, saying the cause of death was compression. Yeah. Mayor Eric Adams on Wednesday night, interviewed by CNN Primetime. Our hearts go out to the family of this terrible incident, and the district attorney, as you stated, the medical examiner office just ruled the case and is now in the hands of the investigators to determine exactly what happened. There are so many unknowns at this time, the mayor said. According to this, Jordan Neely's matters, but where were the progressives when 27 others were killed on the subway? It's good that New York progressive elected officials and transit advocates are outraged by Jordan's Neely killing on Manhattan subway train Monday. Neely's life mattered. So did the lives of the other 27 other people violently killed on the subway since March 2020. Where is the progressive outrage then? It might have delayed his death. Monday afternoon, Neely, 30, was menacing people on the F train in lower Manhattan, according to witnesses. And when another passenger put him in the chokehold, of course, the medical examiner ruled it as a homicide. It's up to the police and the prosecutor. And if it comes to that, a jury to determine whether the killing was justified, self-defense, or just another subway murder. Our progressive polls aren't willing to wait. Jordan Neely was murdered, concluded AOC, just because he was crying for food. People experiencing homeless and mental illness, hunger, and frustration need to deserve compassion, not force, tweeted the councilwoman, Tiffany Cuban. Where was your compassion when his mother was killed? Where was the outreach program to get him the help he needed back when he was 18? Where is the progressive movement to help kids who lost their mother? Like I said, this is a tragic event. This is tragic. This tells me his life didn't matter, but there's people out there making his death matter to score political points. His death matters more than his life. And it's too late to fix him. So you're just going to ruin someone else's life because this person was failed by the city. The city failed to do their job to keep this person safe, to get this person help. They had plenty of chances. He was arrested over 44 times. And they failed him all 44 times. And now a Marine from Queens have to suffer the consequences for Jordan Neely's actions that day. Does mayor, the governor, or any high-ranking MTA official plan to say anything about Jordan Neely's killing today? Asked the author of the popular Subway blog. It's good that progressives are finally interested in a subway killing. I mean, you had a person that was pushed, didn't even see the killer. Someone right behind her pushed her onto an oncoming train. Does her life not matter? But before Neely's death on March 2020, up until early April 20, oh, until early April, 27 people lost their life to murder in the subway. Many of them, like Neely, were homeless young people. Before 2019, it took 15 years for New York to rack up 28 murders on the subway, not three. Where were AOC and Kuhlman when the homeless soccer player Akeem Lonely, 34, was murdered by a stranger as he slept on the subway in November 2021? Where were they when Claudine Roberts, 44, who was also sleeping on the subway, was fatally knifed by a stranger earlier that year? Oh, yes. Came in even as four people were killed within a month last fall on the subway, including a union steam fitter and a city field worker separated on their way home from work, was dismissing concerns about subway violence, calling it a 1 in a million event. Some cases, perpetrators have claimed self-defense, perhaps superfluously. Just in April, an attacker killed an 18-year-old Isaac Colazo aboard a broken train after Colazo's friend pulled the emergency brake, sparking a dispute. The attacker, legal aid lawyer, claims that the dispute escalated to the point where he had to defend himself. Similarly, last fall, the man who allegedly pushed Roberto Quinta to his death under the Jackson Heights train claimed the move during the flight was defensive because the latest case, Neely, was black and the alleged perpetrator appeared to be white. The progressives now are screaming. Good on the New York Post for calling that out. Bernie Goes, after illegally armed man who shot and wounded four people menacing him on the subway in 1984. We cannot end up back to the place where vigilantism is tolerable. Al Sharpton charge. Well, this wasn't really vigilante. I mean, yes, you could call it vigilante to the point where people on the subway that are confined feel that they're unsafe and they got to defend themselves or others from extremely disturbed person that happens to be black, that happens to be homeless, been arrested 44 times, and just fell through the cracks because the city failed them. So Al Sharpton, I don't like Al Sharpton. I'm just going to be honest with you. If Al Sharpton wanted to earn respect and was actually an honest person, he would be going to these neighborhoods and actually helping these people, actually getting the help to Mr. Jordan Neely before this would have happened. But he won't. He'll just take advantage of a tragedy. Actually, the Goas incident wasn't that unusual. Self-defense or the claim of it was common in 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s high-crime subways. In 1979, a 63-year-old man stabbed and killed 23-year-old who said tried to rob him. In 1990, two people died in alleged subway self-defense incidents. Just like the latest case, the press and polls only found Goas interesting because he was white and his assailants were not. What kept killings, including purported self-defense killings on the subway, low after the early 1990s? Low crime. In 1990s, with 26 murders on the subways, riders were on the edge. That was the year Bill Bracton launched broken window policies underground stopping low crimes before they became big ones, and crime fell. In 1929, not 1929, but by 2019, one or two killings a year on the subway, riders feel safe. But now with killings back up in the double digits number annually last year for the first time since the early 1990s, people are scared again. Neely, with a long history of disorderly and violent behavior, is just the latest example of the trend that we've seen for 3 years. Disorder escalates. Whether Dealey's death, or not Dealey, but whether Neely's death was justified or not, it's less important than whether we could have prevented it. The answer is yes. We could have prevented it. We could have gotten him the help. The city could have stepped in and provided him help, but the city failed him. The city failed Jordan Neely. The city failed the Marines from Bronx. According to this, yes, we could have by keeping subways safe as they were in 2019. Ensuring order on the subway means that Neely wouldn't have been able to act in a way that made people scared. It would also make it less likely for a fellow passenger who would react the same way to feeling scared. Violent subway crime, though lower than it was during the last year horrific fall, still 28% higher than it was in 2019. Progressives need to really care about all subway victims to save one who sadly fit their desired narrative of vigilantism. Nicole Gallius is contributing editor to the Manhattan Institution of Journal or City Journal. I don't think there's any comments because they don't do comments. Or the New York Post doesn't do comments when it deals with that. Like I said, this is a tragic death. This is a tragic life that he lived. The city had plenty of chances to get him help. He had plenty of chances to get help. And unfortunately, he tragically died. Almost similar to the way his mother was died, except he wasn't chopped up into his suitcase and thrown off on the highway. Unfortunately, his actions set off a set of reactions that led to his death. And unfortunately, people feel the need to protect themselves. I've seen videos after videos after videos where someone just like Jordan Neely being a menace while cowards sit down and try to ignore the problem. The issue is, on this particular day, a Marine, a U.S. Marine, I don't know if he was a current Marine or former Marine or was discharged, was on the subway. His training kicked in. He saw what was not right and was trying to detain him. Tried to neutralize the target. Unfortunately, he over-neutralized the target. But let's not forget why he neutralized the target, which led to the death of Jordan Neely. Because Jordan Neely was a disturbed person. It's a very sad, tragic event. He lived a sad, tragic life with the killing of his mother. It's sad and tragic because the city just ignored him until he was dead. And now we got the Al Sharptons using the story because it fits their narrative on a white aggressor towards a black person. I'm tired of it. I even hate the fact that I have to use the color of his skin because it shouldn't matter. Shouldn't matter the color of the skin. It should just say a 30-year-old that was acting up was neutralized by another person that was 24. That's all the news had to say, but unfortunately, we don't live in that environment. And I don't know how this video is going to do. I don't know if people's going to watch to the end, but hopefully you do. With that being said, Leave a comment down below on what your thoughts are. But most importantly, have yourself a wonderful weekend. I'll see you Monday.